Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel also. Where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. Story 1. The footsteps on the ceiling. The house stood at the end of Holloway Lane, wrapped in the cold embrace of ancient oak trees. Its towering Victorian frame loomed over the unkempt garden, its windows like dark, empty eyes staring into nothingness. Claire Dawson sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She didn't want to be here, not in this house, not in the place where nightmares felt too real. She had inherited the house after her grandmother's passing, but deep down, she wished she hadn't. The memories tied to it were not hers, but still felt oppressive, like the walls themselves held secrets they weren't willing to share. Her parents had died when she was young, and she had spent only a handful of summers here before her grandmother sent her away to boarding school. Even then, something about the house always felt wrong. And now, she was alone with it. With a deep breath, she grabbed her bag and stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under her boots as she approached the heavy wooden door. The key trembled in her grip as she slid it into the lock. It turned with an unsettling click, and the door creaked open on its own, revealing the darkness within. The scent of aged wood and dust greeted her, mixed with something else. Something faint, but unmistakable. Decay. She stepped inside, flipping the light switch. A dim, flickering chandelier barely illuminated the grand foyer. The house was silent, yet it felt occupied. The walls stretched high, their peeling wallpaper revealing cracks underneath. A grand staircase led to the second floor, where the shadows pooled unnaturally. As she moved through the house, she traced her fingers along the antique furniture, covered in white sheets like forgotten ghosts. The air was heavy with memories, whispers of a past she barely remembered. She found herself standing at the base of the stairs, staring up into the darkness above. Then, a sound, software, barely audible, a single footstep above her. Claire froze. Her pulse hammered in her throat. She swallowed hard, telling herself it was just an old house settling, that the wood was expanding in the night air. But then came another footstep, and another, slow, deliberate, coming from the ceiling. A chill crawled down her spine as she backed away. The footsteps continued slow and steady, pacing directly above her head. Her breath came in short, shaky gasps as she tried to reason with herself. Maybe it was an animal in the attic. Maybe it was thump. A loud step, too heavy to be an animal. Then silence. Claire turned and bolted for the door, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. She reached for the handle, but just as she gripped it, a voice. Software. Faint. Right above her. Claire. The sound was distant, like a whisper through layers of time. She gasped and spun around, staring up at the ceiling. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Then, in the stillness, came a final chilling sound. A single knock, directly above her head. Claire didn't scream. She couldn't. The terror was lodged too deep in her throat. She yanked the door open, stumbled outside, and slammed it shut behind her, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She stood there staring at the house, her mind racing. She should leave. She should get in her car and never come back. But something inside her wouldn't let her. Because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She knew that voice. It sounded like her grandfather, the one who had disappeared 40 years ago, and he was calling her name. Claire sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, her breath uneven. The darkness outside pressed in, wrapping around the house like a suffocating cloak. The voice, her grandfather's voice, still echoed in her mind. Claire. It couldn't be. Henry Dawson had vanished 40 years ago, but she had heard it, right above her. Her first instinct was to drive away, but something held her back. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was something darker, something the house itself had placed inside her. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She needed to talk to someone, anyone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name, Ethan Carter, a journalist obsessed with paranormal cases, someone who had spent years chasing ghosts, trying to separate reality from horror stories. The phone rang once, twice, then his voice came through, groggy. "Claire," she exhaled sharply. "Ethan, She hesitated. If she told him what she heard, would he believe her? She closed her eyes and forced the words out. "Something's in the house." Silence. Then Ethan's voice sharpened. "Where are you?" "In my car. Outside. She glanced back at the house. "I heard something. Footsteps. In the ceiling." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, in a serious tone, he said, "Stay there. I'm coming." The distant growl of Ethan's car engine broke the oppressive silence. His headlights cut through the mist as he pulled up beside her. He stepped out, wearing a worn leather jacket, his dark eyes scanning the house. Claire got out of her car, arms wrapped around herself. "I don't know why I called you," she admitted. Ethan studied her. "Because you're scared." She swallowed. "Because I heard him." Ethan frowned. "Who?" "My grandfather." Her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't react with disbelief, didn't mock her. Instead, he pulled out a small recorder from his pocket. "Let's go inside." Claire's body stiffened. Every part of her screamed no. But Ethan was already heading toward the house. She hesitated, then forced herself to follow. The air was thick, stagnant, as if the house itself had been waiting for them. The chandelier's dim light flickered weakly. Ethan glanced around, his journalist instincts kicking in. When did the footsteps start? Claire wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "The first night I got here." Ethan turned on his recorder. "And they came from the ceiling?" She nodded. "Directly above me." Ethan walked further in, the wooden floor creaking beneath his boots. His eyes were drawn to the staircase. "What's up there?" Claire hesitated. "The attic." Ethan's gaze darkened. "We should check it out." A wave of dread crashed over her. "No." Ethan turned to her. "Claire, something is trying to get your attention. If we ignore it, it might get worse." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it already was worse, but then... Thump. Both of them froze. The sound was unmistakable. A single, heavy footstep. From the ceiling. Ethan slowly looked up. Claire clutched his arm, her nails digging into his jacket. Then came another step, and another. Something was walking above them. Ethan grabbed his recorder and whispered, "Is someone here with us?" Silence. Then, the footsteps stopped directly above them. A soft, whispering breath leaked through the ceiling. A voice. "Let me out." Claire's blood turned to ice. Ethan's grip on his recorder tightened. Then, a loud bang. The chandelier swung violently, glass shaking as an unseen force slammed into the ceiling above them. Dust rained down. Claire screamed, "Ethan, we need to go." But Ethan was staring at the ceiling in shock, because something had started scratching it. Deep, agonizing scratches, as if fingernails were tearing through the wood. Then the worst sound of all. The slow, creaking groan of the attic door opening above them. Something had just let itself out, and it was no longer trapped in the ceiling. The sound of the attic door creaking open sent a jolt of cold terror through Claire's body. She turned to Ethan, eyes wide, whispering, "Did you hear that?" Ethan didn't respond. His gaze was locked on the staircase, his jaw tight. The recorder in his hand was still running, the small red light blinking. Then, a sound from above, a slow, dragging noise, like something heavy shuffling across the attic floor. Claire's breath hitched. Something was up there, something that had been waiting. The chandelier above them swayed slightly, as if the very air in the house had changed. A thick, suffocating silence settled between them. Then, the dragging sound stopped. Ethan exhaled sharply. "We have to go up there." Claire recoiled. "Are you insane?" Ethan looked at her. "Claire, something opened that door, and it's not leaving." She shook her head violently. "We don't know what's up there. We don't know." Then, as if to answer her, a single footstep echoed from the attic. Slow, deliberate, right above them. Then another, and another. Something was walking to the attic stairs. Claire's entire body locked up. Her breathing turned shallow. The steps weren't random anymore. They were coming toward the attic entrance. Then, silence. Claire swallowed, her pulse hammering. "Ethan." Ethan's eyes were locked on the ceiling. His voice was low. It's standing at the top of the attic stairs. Claire's stomach twisted. It was watching them, waiting. Then, a sharp, rattling bang. The attic stairs suddenly dropped open. The old wooden steps unfolded violently, slamming against the floor with a thunderous crash. Claire screamed, stumbling backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Above them, a gaping black hole yawned open. The attic was waiting, and something was inside it. Ethan turned to Claire, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay here." Claire grabbed his arm. "No, you don't have to go up there." Ethan's face was set in determination, but his hand trembled as he lifted the recorder. "I need to know what's inside." He pulled out his flashlight, flicked it on, and aimed it up into the attic's darkness. The light barely penetrated the void. Thick dust swirled in the air. Wooden beams crisscrossed above, their edges splintered and warped with time. Cobwebs hung like rotting curtains, swaying slightly as if something had just passed through them. The air that poured from the attic was wrong. It smelled of rotting wood, of dampness, of something ancient and unseen. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before placing his foot on the first step. The wood groaned beneath his weight. Claire's hands balled into fists as she watched him ascend, each step slower than the last. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might deafen her. Ethan reached the top. Then he froze. His flashlight beam had landed on something in the attic. Claire saw his body tense. His breathing turned sharp and erratic. Then he whispered, "Oh my God." Claire couldn't take it anymore. What do you see?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He slowly lifted the recorder and whispered into it, "I'm looking at something. Something impossible." Then his voice changed. It dropped into something breathless, something horrified. "Claire, I think it's your grandfather." Claire's blood turned to ice. Then Ethan's flashlight flickered. The air in the attic shifted violently, like something had rushed toward him. The last thing Claire heard was Ethan screaming as his flashlight went out. And then, total darkness. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The attic had swallowed Ethan whole. 1 second, he was there. The next, his flashlight died, and the attic fell into pitch-black silence. "Ethan," Claire whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her own heartbeat. No response. Then something moved. A soft, deliberate shuffling sound, like bare feet scraping against wood. It came from the attic, just beyond the fold of darkness. Claire took a step back, gripping the edge of the railing. The open attic stairs gaped like the mouth of a hungry beast, a portal into something not meant for this world. Then Ethan's voice came, low, shaky. "Claire." Her heart leapt. "Ethan, are you okay?" Silence. Then, in the same low whisper, but slightly off, slightly wrong, "Come up here." Every hair on Claire's body stood on end. Something was deeply, horribly wrong. She gripped the edge of the attic ladder, but did not move. "Ethan," she called again, her voice trembling. A pause. Then, the exact same words, the exact same tone. "Come up here." A mimic, not Ethan. Claire's stomach twisted violently. She stumbled back, shaking her head. Something was pretending to be him. Then, a sharp, inhuman scratching against the wooden beams above. Claire's breath hitched. The sound was wrong. It wasn't a normal scratch. It was slow, deep, calculated, like long, jagged fingernails carving into the wood. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward the attic entrance. Claire's pulse spiked. She had to run. She had to get out of the house. But just as she turned to flee, a hand appeared on the attic floor. Pale, too long, too thin. Fingers stretched unnaturally as they curled around the wooden beam. Then, another hand. Then, a face. Not Ethan's. A hollow, sunken thing. Skin stretched tight over bone. Its empty sockets locked onto Claire. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, a black void, silent, watching. Then it lunged. Claire screamed and stumbled backward as the thing crawled down the attic stairs, like a spider, its limbs moving in unnatural jerks. She turned and ran. Her foot caught the edge of a rug. She tumbled hard onto the wooden floor, the breath knocked out of her lungs. Behind her, the thing scrambled faster, its hands slamming against the wood with sickening force. Claire clawed at the ground, desperate to get up. Then, a sudden crash. The attic stairs snapped shut. A loud, echoing bang. As the entrance slammed closed, sealing the creature inside, Claire gasped, her whole body trembling as she scrambled to her feet. Silence. The house felt dead again. She staggered back, staring up at the ceiling. The attic door looked normal, untouched, as if it had never opened in the first place. But she knew what she had seen, what she had heard. Something had been up there. Something was still up there. And Ethan, he was gone. Claire grabbed her keys and bolted for the door. She couldn't stay here, not with that thing. But just as she reached for the handle, a whisper from the ceiling, software, almost amused. "Don't leave yet, Claire." Her blood turned to ice. She looked up. The attic door was slightly open again, and something was smiling down at her. Claire's fingers trembled on the door handle. Behind her, the attic door was open again. Not fully, just a sliver. A gap wide enough to see something peering down at her. A face, stretched and inhuman, its grin too wide, its eyes too deep. And it had whispered her name. "Don't leave yet, Claire." Her breath came in short, ragged bursts. This wasn't happening. This was a nightmare, a fever dream, anything but reality. But then, the thing moved. It didn't climb down. It didn't lunge. It simply tilted its head, like it was studying her. A deep, suffocating pressure filled the room, as if the air itself had thickened, pressing down on her lungs. Claire wanted to run, wanted to throw open the door and never come back, but she couldn't. Not without Ethan. He was still up there, somewhere, if he was even still alive. Her shaking fingers gripped the doorknob, but she didn't turn it. She forced herself to look back up at the attic. The face was gone. The attic door hung open, revealing only darkness. But something had changed. The air smelled different now, like damp earth, like rotting leaves. Claire swallowed hard. Her voice barely came out. "Ethan." Silence. Then a sound, not a voice, not footsteps, but breathing. Something in the attic was breathing, slow, measured, too deep. Claire's skin prickled. It wasn't human. She turned back to the door. She had to get out. Had to. A whisper. "You brought me back, Claire." Her entire body went cold. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. But the voice continued, creeping through the air like something wet and rotting. I waited for so long, and now I'm free. A soft sound followed. Something shifting, moving down. It was coming out of the attic. Claire threw open the door and ran. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and suffocating. Gravel crunched beneath her boots as she sprinted toward her car, heart hammering. She fumbled with her keys, breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. She had to leave, had to... The engine wouldn't start. Claire twisted the key again, harder, her pulse thundering in her ears. Click, click, click. Nothing. She choked on a sob. Number no, no, no. She reached for her phone. No signal. Her shaking hands gripped the steering wheel. Think. She could run, get to town, find help. She reached for the door handle and froze. In the rearview mirror, the attic window, something was standing there, watching her, its hollow eyes locked onto hers, its mouth slowly curling into a wide, unnatural grin. Then it lifted a hand and waved. Claire screamed. She threw herself out of the car, legs numb with terror, and ran. Not toward the house, not toward the woods, just away. Away from the thing that knew her name. Away from the thing that had been waiting for her. Claire's lungs burned as she ran, blindly, desperately. The cold air bit at her skin, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Something was watching her, from the house, from the attic, and somehow she knew it wasn't just watching. It was following. The gravel driveway ended, and her boots sank into damp earth as she sprinted toward the woods. Trees loomed ahead, black against the night sky, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers. She didn't care. Anything was better than the thing in the attic, the thing that knew her name. The moment she crossed into the tree line, the air changed. The wind stopped. The world became too quiet. Only her ragged breathing remained, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She slowed, glancing behind her. The house stood in the distance, its attic window still visible through the branches, but the figure was gone. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe... Snap. A twig cracked somewhere to her left. Claire's breath hitched. She wasn't alone. Slowly, she turned. Nothing. Just trees. Darkness. Silence. Then, another sound. This time, right behind her. A breath. Slow. Too close. Claire spun around. Nothing. Her pulse pounded. She had to keep moving. She turned back toward the path and froze. The trees had changed. She wasn't facing the trail anymore. The path that had led her into the woods was gone, replaced by twisted, gnarled branches. The forest had moved. Claire's stomach twisted. This wasn't normal. This wasn't real. She turned in a slow, panicked circle, and that's when she saw it. A figure, standing between the trees, motionless, watching her, not moving, not breathing, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, its mouth stretched too wide, and though it had no eyes, Claire knew it was looking at her. She took a step back. The figure tilted its head further. Then, it took a step forward. The ground shuddered. Claire turned and ran. Branches tore at her skin as she sprinted through the trees, her vision blurring with panic. The forest was shifting. The trees seemed closer than before. The air felt thick, pressing in on her, suffocating her. And behind her, the footsteps. Not human footsteps. Something heavier. Something wrong. He wasn't running. He didn't need to. He was just walking, steady, certain, like it already knew. She wasn't getting away. Claire's breath came in ragged gasps. Then, a voice, software, right beside her ear. "Where are you going, Claire?" Claire screamed. She didn't stop running, but something was wrong. Her legs, they were getting heavier. Her vision, darkening at the edges, like the forest itself was pulling her down. Then, up ahead, a light, distant, faint, but real. She ran toward it with everything she had, lungs burning, heart hammering. And then, suddenly, the ground was gone. Claire's foot hit nothing, and she plunged downward, into blackness. Claire's scream vanished into the void as she fell. The world above her, the twisting trees, the whispering shadows, ripped away in an instant. She plunged into blackness, her stomach lurching as icy air swallowed her whole. Then, impact. Her body slammed against wet earth, the breath torn from her lungs. Pain shot through her ribs, her arms, her legs, but she was alive. She coughed, gasping for air, hands clawing at the mud beneath her. The smell of damp rot filled her nose. For a long moment, she just lay there, her mind spinning. Then, she opened her eyes and realized she was not in the forest anymore. Darkness pressed in from all sides. The air was thick, heavy with dampness, with the scent of decay. Claire pushed herself up, wincing. Her hands sank into soft, wet earth, like the ground had been freshly disturbed, like something had been buried here. She shuddered, forcing herself to stand. Then she looked up. Above her, the hole she had fallen through was gone. Nothing but a solid ceiling of earth, like the forest had swallowed her whole. Her pulse pounded. Number? No. She spun around, heart racing. She was in a tunnel. A long, narrow passage of dirt and stone, stretching into the darkness. The walls pulsed with dampness, the ceiling low enough that she had to stoop. And the worst part, she was not alone. At first, Claire thought it was just the sound of her own ragged breaths. But no, somewhere ahead, something else was breathing. Deep, slow, like something big, something waiting. Claire pressed a hand over her mouth, biting back a sob. This isn't real. But then, a whisper. "You found me, Claire." Her blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. It was Ethan's, but it was wrong. Too slow, too calm, and it was coming from the dark. Claire backed away. Her foot sank into the mud, and she almost fell again. But she caught herself, her fingers scraping against the tunnel wall. A sickening realization curled into her gut. The walls weren't just dirt. They were wood, old rotting wood. And there were nails jutting out, bent, rusted, like broken coffin lids. Her breath hitched. This wasn't a tunnel. It was a burial ground. Then, the breathing stopped. Silence crashed down around her. Claire froze. The darkness ahead was so still, too still, like something was holding its breath too, watching her, waiting. Then a sound, a soft, wet thump. Then another. Footsteps, coming toward her. Claire's chest locked up. She turned and ran. She sprinted through the tunnel, her feet splashing through pools of stagnant water. The footsteps followed, faster now, louder, and then something grabbed her ankle, Claire screamed and kicked violently, tearing free. But the hands kept coming. Pale, rotting fingers burst from the mud, clawing at her legs, her arms, dead hands, crawling out of the earth. She stumbled forward, her lungs burning. And then, up ahead, a light, faint, flickering, an opening, a way out. Claire threw herself forward, hands clawing at the dirt, scrambling toward it. The footsteps behind her quickened. The whispering voices rose into a chorus. She wasn't supposed to escape. She was supposed to stay. But Claire lunged through the opening, and the ground vanished beneath her. She fell again, but this time, into light, into reality. She hit the floor with a bone-rattling crash, hardwood, familiar. And then, silence. The air was still. No more voices, no more footsteps, just the sound of a single slow drip. Claire looked up and realized where she was. She was back in the house, back in the living room, and above her, the attic door was wide open. Claire lay on the wooden floor, gasping for breath. The tunnel was gone. The crawling hands, the whispers, the suffocating darkness, all gone. But she wasn't safe, not yet. Above her, the attic door hung open, revealing a gaping black void. The air in the house felt different, heavier, alive, like the walls had been waiting for her return. A single drip echoed from above, slow, rhythmic. Claire swallowed hard. She knew what she had to do. She had to go back up. She had to face whatever was waiting. She had to find Ethan, even if Ethan was no longer. Ethan. Her legs trembled as she stood. The wooden floor creaked beneath her weight, but something was wrong. The creak echoed, like the sound was coming from above her too. Her eyes snapped up, and her blood turned to ice. The ceiling, it wasn't solid anymore. It was soft, pulsing, alive. The wooden panels had become flesh, shifting beneath an unseen force, and just beyond the attic entrance, something was moving. Claire's breath hitched. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. And then, a hand gripped the edge of the attic door. Not human, not anymore. The fingers were too long, the nails jagged and blackened. The skin stretched too thin over unnatural bones. And then, a voice, low, wrong. Claire, you should not have left. Her heart slammed against her ribs. It was Ethan's voice, but it wasn't Ethan. Not anymore. A shape descended from the attic. At first it looked like him, same hair, same building. But as it stepped into the light, the truth bled through. The face was too smooth, the eyes hollow pits, and the smile stretched, wrong, endless, like a mask that had been worn too long. Claire took a step back. Her entire body screamed to run. But Ethan, the thing that had once been Ethan, tilted its head and took a step toward her. You brought me back, Claire. Its voice warped like a chorus of voices stacked on top of each other. And now you have to stay. Claire spun and bolted for the front door. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She grabbed the handle, twisted it hard, locked. Her breath hitched. She reached for the windows, nails shut. The walls groaned around her, shifting like something breathing. The house wasn't just keeping her in, it was closing in. Claire. The whisper came from everywhere, from the walls, the ceiling, the floor beneath her feet. She turned, and Ethan was right there, close enough to touch her. His hand, wrong, stretched, jagged, reached for her face. You should never have left me. Claire's breath came in ragged gasps. She had one chance. She did the only thing she could. She ran toward the attic, back to where it all began. Because if she didn't, she knew she'd never escape. Claire's feet pounded against the wooden stairs as she ran. The attic loomed above her, its gaping entrance swallowing all light. Behind her, Ethan followed, Ethan was gone, swallowed by the fire, vanishing with the house that had held him. Claire stood there for a long time, watching, waiting. But Ethan never came back. Only the fire remained. By the time the first sirens pierced the night, the house was gone, reduced to smouldering ruins, nothing left but blackened beams and ash. And yet, as Claire turned away, as she finally walked back toward the road, she heard it, so soft, so faint, a single, slow footstep. Not behind her, not beside her, above. She lifted her eyes to the sky and saw nothing. But she knew, somewhere the house still remembered her, somewhere it was waiting. And one day, it might just call her back. The end. Story 2. The Man Who Only Appears in Reflections. Jonathan Wells had never been one to believe in the supernatural. His world revolved around logic, facts, and the tangible realities of everyday life. So when he found a spacious apartment in the heart of the city for a price that seemed almost too good to be true, he didn't waste time questioning it. He signed the lease, packed his belongings, and moved in within a week. The apartment was a dream, modern yet cozy, with high ceilings and large windows that bathed the rooms in warm sunlight during the day. The hardwood floors had a slight creak to them, but it only added to the charm. One feature that particularly stood out was the full-length mirror in the hallway. It was an antique, its frame dark wood with intricate carvings, the glass itself slightly warped with age. The previous tenant had left it behind, and though Jonathan had considered removing it, he ultimately decided it gave the space character. His first night was uneventful. He unpacked lazily, made himself a quick dinner, and settled into bed, listening to the distant hum of city life outside his window. The apartment was silent, aside from the occasional groan of the pipes, something he'd have to get used to. But on the second night, something changed. As he walked past the hallway mirror, he felt it, an unshakable sensation of being watched. He stopped in his tracks, heart beating a little faster, and turned toward the mirror. His reflection was there, just as it should be, but something about it unsettled him. He couldn't quite place why. He leaned in, studying his own face, dark hair slightly disheveled from the move, tired eyes, the shadow of a beard forming along his jaw. Nothing out of the ordinary, and yet a noise behind him, soft, barely audible, a whisper of movement. Jonathan spun around. The hallway was empty. His throat tightened. He let out a nervous chuckle. "I'm just exhausted," he told himself. Shaking his head, he turned away from the mirror and walked toward his bedroom. But just as he stepped inside, something flickered in the mirror's reflection. A movement. He turned back, too fast, his breath caught in his throat. The mirror showed only him, his own tired reflection, standing in the dim hallway light. Story 2. The Man Who Only Appears in Reflections. Jonathan Wells had never been one to believe in the supernatural. His world revolved around logic, facts, and the tangible realities of everyday life. So when he found a spacious apartment in the heart of the city for a price that seemed almost too good to be true, he didn't waste time questioning it. He signed the lease, packed his belongings, and moved in within a week. The apartment was a dream, modern yet cozy, with high ceilings and large windows that bathed the rooms in warm sunlight during the day. The hardwood floors had a slight creak to them, but it only added to the charm. One feature that particularly stood out was the full-length mirror in the hallway. It was an antique, its frame dark wood with intricate carvings, the glass itself slightly warped with age. The previous tenant had left it behind, and though Jonathan had considered removing it, he ultimately decided it gave the space character. His first night was uneventful. He unpacked lazily, made himself a quick dinner, and settled into bed, listening to the distant hum of city life outside his window. The apartment was silent, aside from the occasional groan of the pipes, something he'd have to get used to. But on the second night, something changed. As he walked past the hallway mirror, he felt it, an unshakable sensation of being watched. He stopped in his tracks, heart beating a little faster, and turned toward the mirror. His reflection was there, just as it should be, but something about it unsettled him. He couldn't quite place why. He leaned in, studying his own face. Dark hair slightly disheveled from the move, tired eyes, the shadow of a beard forming along his jaw. Nothing out of the ordinary. And yet, a noise behind him, soft, barely audible, a whisper of movement. Jonathan spun around. The hallway was empty. His throat tightened. He let out a nervous chuckle. "I'm just exhausted," he told himself. Shaking his head, he turned away from the mirror and walked toward his bedroom. But just as he stepped inside, something flickered in the mirror's reflection. A movement. He turned back, too fast, his breath caught in his throat. The mirror showed only him, his own tired reflection, standing in the dim hallway light. Story 2. The man who only appears in reflections. Jonathan Wells had never been one to believe in the supernatural. His world revolved around logic, facts, and the tangible realities of everyday life. So when he found a spacious apartment in the heart of the city for a price that seemed almost too good to be true, he didn't waste frowning. He lingered for a moment before exhaling sharply and shutting his bedroom door. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe the long hours at work were finally catching up to him. He climbed into bed, trying to shake off the unease. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the feeling that someone had been there, watching. The unease didn't go away. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing day. Jonathan tried to ignore it. He buried himself in work, kept his mind occupied, and avoided looking at the mirror for too long. But something about the apartment felt off. The air seemed heavier, the silence more suffocating. The feeling of being watched never truly left him. Then, on the 5th night, it happened. It was late, past midnight. Jonathan had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on, the faint glow flickering across the darkened living room. A distant sound woke him. A creak. Not the usual groan of the apartment settling. This was different. Closer. Still groggy, he sat up, rubbing his eyes. The apartment was silent again. He reached for the remote to turn off the TV, but as the screen darkened, his breath caught in his throat. A figure, reflected in the black screen just behind him. Jonathan whipped around, heart hammering. Nothing. His pulse pounded in his ears. He turned back to the TV, staring at the dark screen, searching for what he had just seen. But now, all it reflected was the room. For a long moment, he sat frozen, ears straining for any sound. He wanted to dismiss it as a trick of the light, a sleep-induced hallucination. But deep down, he knew better. Shaking off the lingering fear, he stood and stretched, deciding to call it a night. As he made his way toward his bedroom, he passed the hallway mirror, and that was when he saw him. The figure stood behind him in the reflection, tall, thin, dressed in a tattered black suit, the fabric faded with time. His skin was pale, too pale, almost grey, and his eyes, hollow. Black pits where his eyes should have been, empty and endless. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to run, but he couldn't move. He could only stare, frozen in horror, as the figure in the mirror slowly tilted its head. A whisper, soft, almost inaudible. The sound brushed against Jonathan's ear like a cold breath. Then, in the blink of an eye, the figure was gone. Jonathan stumbled back, heart racing. He spun around, searching the hallway, the apartment. Anywhere the figure could have gone, empty. But when he turned back to the mirror, he swore he saw the faintest trace of a smile lingering in the glass. And for the first time, Jonathan felt something he hadn't in years: terror. Jonathan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that figure in the mirror, those hollow black eyes staring back at him. He told himself it was a trick of exhaustion, his mind playing games. But deep inside, he knew that wasn't true. The next morning, he avoided looking into any mirrors. He shaved without one, used his phone screen cautiously, and made sure to keep the hallway mirror out of his direct line of sight. But no matter what he did, that feeling remained, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against him, watching, waiting. The first whisper came that night. He was lying in bed, desperately trying to fall asleep, when he heard it, faint, like a breath carried on the wind. "Let me in." Jonathan's eyes snapped open. He sat up, heart thundering. The room was silent, only the distant hum of the city outside. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I'm losing it," he thought. "It's stress, just stress." But then he heard it again. "Let me in." A whisper, right next to his ear. Jonathan lunged for the bedside lamp, flicking it on. His breathing was ragged, his skin cold with sweat. He scanned the room, his gaze darting toward the closet, the shadows in the corners. Nothing. And then, against every rational instinct, his eyes were drawn to the mirror on his closet door. At first, it reflected nothing but his own wide-eyed, terrified face. But then, something moved. A flicker, a ripple, as if the surface of the glass were made of water. And then, there he was, the man in the black suit, standing just behind Jonathan in the reflection, too close. So close that if he had been real, Jonathan would have felt his breath on the back of his neck. But this time, something was different. The man's lips moved, not in a whisper, but in silent words, soundless against the still air of the room. Jonathan's chest tightened. His entire body felt paralyzed as he watched the man's mouth form the same three words. "Let me in." The light flickered. Jonathan scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. He grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered. Jonathan gasped for breath, his entire body shaking. The whisper stopped. The reflection was gone. For a moment, the silence was deafening. Then, as if nothing had happened, the apartment returned to its quiet, eerie normalcy. Jonathan stood there for a long time, staring at the broken mirror. He told himself it was over, that destroying the mirror had put an end to whatever was haunting him. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Jonathan didn't go back to sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the shards of the broken mirror scattered across the floor. His heart still pounded, his hands still trembled. The image of the man in the reflection was burned into his mind. Those hollow black eyes, the tattered suit, the silent words forming on his lips. "Let me in." His rational mind fought to explain it. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was a waking nightmare. Maybe the exhaustion was making him hallucinate. But then, why had the whispers stopped the moment the mirror shattered? As dawn broke, he carefully cleaned up the shards, wrapping them in a towel before throwing them into the trash. He avoided looking directly at the reflective surfaces of the fragments. A deep, primal fear told him that if he did, he might see him again. Jonathan left the apartment that morning with one goal in mind: getting answers. He met Sarah for lunch at a quiet cafe near his office. Sarah was a co-worker, but more importantly, she had an intense fascination with the paranormal. She had always been the type to talk about haunted houses, cursed objects, and ghostly encounters as if they were part of normal conversation. Jonathan had always dismissed it as silly, until now. "You look like hell," Sarah said, stirring her coffee as she studied his face. "You haven't been sleeping, have you?" Jonathan exhaled sharply. "Something's happening in my apartment, and I need you to tell me if this sounds crazy." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Try me." So he told her everything. The strange feeling of being watched, the first glimpse of the figure in the mirror, the whispers in the night, the words the figure had mouthed, and finally, the moment he had shattered the mirror, hoping it would end. When he finished, Sarah sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. Then she spoke. "You're describing a reflection entity," she said. Jonathan frowned. "A what?" "There are spirits that don't exist in our world. They only exist in reflections. Mirrors, glass, even water sometimes. Most of them are just echoes, stuck in their own dimension. But some are different. Some of them want something." Jonathan swallowed. His hands were cold. "And what does this one want?" Sarah's gaze darkened. "If it keeps appearing, it wants in." Jonathan felt a chill creep down his spine. "What do you mean, in?" Sarah hesitated before leaning forward slightly. "Mirrors are believed to be gateways, Jonathan. Portals between worlds. If something keeps showing up in your reflection, it means it's trying to bridge the gap. It wants to replace you." His stomach twisted. "Replace me?" She nodded. "It's happened before. People claim that someone they know, someone they trust, starts acting different, slightly off, a little too perfect, and sometimes the real person is never seen again." Jonathan felt sick. He gripped his coffee cup, his mind racing. "But I shattered the mirror," he said quickly. "That should stop it, right?" Sarah was silent for too long. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, "Have you looked into any other reflections since then?" Jonathan's breath caught. He hadn't. He had been avoiding them, not even glancing at the windows of the buildings he passed on the way to the cafe. A terrible thought crept into his mind. The mirror in the hallway wasn't the only reflective surface in my apartment. And if the entity was strong enough, breaking one mirror wouldn't be enough to stop it. Jonathan's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, flipping the screen to black. He hesitated. His own reflection stared back at him, tired, pale, haunted. For a moment, there was nothing unusual. Then, just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, something shifted. Not in his face, not in his features, but in the eyes of his reflection. Just for a second, his pupils dilated too much. The blackness spread just a fraction of an inch further than it should have. A flicker of something else, something watching him from inside. Jonathan's blood ran cold. The man in the reflection was still there. He had never left. Jonathan nearly dropped his phone. His breath hitched, his pulse hammering in his ears. The change in his reflection had been subtle. Just a fraction of a second, a flicker, but he had seen it. He's still there. Across the table, Sarah watched him with growing concern. "Jonathan," she said carefully, "what did you see?" Jonathan he swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her it was nothing, that his mind was playing tricks on him, that this was all just paranoia, but he couldn't lie to himself anymore. My reflection, he whispered. It changed, just for a second. My eyes, they weren't mine. Sarah's face paled. She set her coffee down, leaning in closer. Okay, listen to me very carefully. If this thing is still with you, then it means you're in danger. But there are rules to how reflection entities work. If we can figure out what it wants, we might be able to stop it. Jonathan clenched his fists under the table, his body rigid with fear. Rules? What rules? Sarah took a deep breath. There are stories, old stories, about entities that live in mirrors. Some of them are just echoes, lost souls repeating the past. But others, the ones that interact with us, they have intentions. Jonathan shuddered, feeling the weight of something unseen pressing against him. Sarah continued, if it's trying to take your place, then it needs you to do something. Letting a reflection entity in isn't like a ghost haunting. It requires permission. Jonathan shook his head. Permission? I never gave it permission. Sarah frowned. Are you sure? Think carefully. Did you ever speak to it? Respond to it? Acknowledge it in any way? His stomach twisted. Let me in. The whisper had echoed in his ears for nights now. He had never answered it. But then, his mind flashed back to the night he shattered the mirror. I told it to stop. He had spoken to it. Sarah's expression darkened. That might have been enough. By acknowledging it, you might have given it just enough power to start breaking through. Jonathan's throat went dry. So what do I do? Sarah hesitated, glancing around the cafe as if afraid someone or something might be listening. Then she leaned in even closer, lowering her voice. You have to starve it. Entities like this feed on interaction. The more you acknowledge them, the stronger they get. You need to stop looking into mirrors. Stop reacting to anything you see in reflections. Don't speak to it. Don't even think about it more than you have to. If it doesn't get what it wants, it might weaken. Jonathan exhaled shakily. That's it. Just ignore it. It's the only way to cut off its power, she said firmly. But if it's already strong, that might not be enough. You need to be prepared for... The lights in the cafe flickered. Jonathan and Sarah both froze. The cafe was busy, full of people chatting, silverware clinking, baristas steaming milk. But in that instant, the world seemed to pause. A sudden, suffocating stillness settled over them. The air turned heavy, pressing against Jonathan's chest. His fingers twitched toward his phone again, but Sarah reached out, grabbing his wrist before he could look at the screen. Don't, she said sharply. Jonathan's breath came faster. He didn't need to look. He felt it. Something was watching him. The flickering light stabilized. The cafe's normal sounds resumed. The weight on his chest lifted, but the icy grip of fear remained. Sarah slowly released his wrist. It's getting desperate. Jonathan stared at her. Desperate for what? Sarah's eyes were grim. For you. Jonathan swallowed, pushing his chair back. He needed to get out of there, away from the reflections, away from people. But deep down, he knew the truth. No matter where he went, he wasn't alone, because the man in the reflection was always watching. Jonathan barely made it back to his apartment before the panic set in. His hands shook as he locked the door behind him, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Every reflective surface in his home suddenly felt like a doorway, an open invitation for the thing that had been watching him. Starve it, Sarah had said. Don't look. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge it. Easier said than done. He turned his phone face down on the counter. The television stayed off. The windows, God, he hadn't even thought about the windows, were covered with thin curtains, but they still reflected just enough to make his skin crawl. Jonathan moved quickly, grabbing blankets, shirts, anything he could find, and draped them over mirrors, screens, even the microwave. By the time he finished, the apartment looked like a home in mourning. He collapsed onto the couch, running a hand down his face. This is insane. A week ago, he had been a normal guy with a normal job. Now he was covering his mirrors like some paranoid lunatic. But as he sat there, he felt it. The pressure, the presence. The man in the reflection was still here, somewhere, watching. The first mistake happened in the kitchen. Jonathan had forced himself to eat something, though his stomach felt like a clenched fist. He had kept his head down, focusing on his plate, refusing to look anywhere else. But as he reached for a glass of water, it hit the floor and shattered. Jonathan cursed, stepping back to avoid the shards. His heart pounded as he grabbed a paper towel to clean up the mess. But as he crouched down, he saw it. 1,000 tiny fragments of broken glass, and in each one, his reflection. Dozens of them. But not his. His reflections weren't moving, but one of them was. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. In one tiny shard near his foot, the man in the black suit was crouched just behind him. His hollow eyes fixed on Jonathan's back. His lips moved, forming silent words. "Let me in." Jonathan scrambled away, his foot slipping on the tile. His elbow hit the counter hard, sending a jolt of pain through his arm. He gasped, heart racing. Don't react. Don't acknowledge it. With shaking hands, he forced himself to look away, grabbing more towels to sweep the glass into the trash. He didn't look at the reflections again, but as he dumped the shards into the bin, he swore he heard something. A faint, brittle chuckle. It was laughing, and Jonathan had just made his first mistake. Jonathan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch, knees drawn to his chest, every light in the apartment on. The pressure in the air hadn't left. It wouldn't leave. He could feel it, like the weight of a storm pressing down on his skin. The man in the reflection was getting stronger. Jonathan could still hear that sound, that brittle, empty laugh that had crawled into his ears when he cleaned up the shattered glass. It knows. It knew that he had seen it again. It knew that he had reacted. The rules were breaking. Somewhere past 3 a.m., the apartment turned wrong. It was subtle at first. The lights dimmed, not flickering, not shutting off, just dimming, like something was draining the power. The air grew thick, damp, suffocating. The hum of the refrigerator faded into silence. Then the whispers started again. Jonathan. His name, just that. A breath of sound curling through the room like smoke. Jonathan. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay still. He knew this was a trap. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge it. But then, tap, tap, tap. His stomach twisted. The sound was coming from the hallway, from behind the covered mirror. A slow, deliberate tapping on the glass. Jonathan gripped the couch cushion, knuckles white. The air was so thick now that it felt like his lungs were full of water. Then, tap, tap, tap. Faster, more insistent. The sound rattled through the apartment like a heartbeat. Then silence. Jonathan's breath hitched. The air was waiting. And then, the cloth over the mirror slid off. Not ripped, not yanked, just gone. The mirror was bare, and the man was standing there. Not behind Jonathan, not mimicking his movements, standing closer than before. His hollow black eyes locked onto Jonathan's, and this time, his lips weren't forming silent words. This time, Jonathan heard him. "I don't need your permission anymore." The lights went out, and the apartment filled with laughter. Darkness swallowed the room. Jonathan shot to his feet, heart hammering against his ribs. The laughter slithered through the apartment, low, rasping, stretching from the corners of the room, like 100 unseen mouths whispering in unison. "I don't need your permission anymore." The words echoed, curling through the suffocating blackness. Jonathan's breath came in ragged gasps. He fumbled in the dark, reaching blindly for his phone, his only source of light. A cold breeze brushed his neck. Number, not a breeze. Breath. Jonathan turned, but the moment he did, something moved, not in the room, but in the reflection. The mirror had changed. It no longer reflected his dimly lit apartment. Instead, it showed something else. A vast, empty space. Black, endless, shifting like a void beneath deep water. A place where light went to die. And in that space the man stood waiting. He was closer now, his gaunt face inches from the glass. His hollow eyes bored into Jonathan's. But now, something else had changed. His hands. They were pressed against the inside of the mirror. The glass rippled like liquid beneath his palms. Jonathan staggered back, his mind screaming for him to run. But his body felt sluggish, wrong, as if something were pulling him toward the mirror instead. The reflection man smiled. Slowly, his fingers curled into fists. His lips parted, revealing teeth too sharp, too jagged, like broken glass. Then, crack, a jagged fracture split across the mirror. Jonathan's breath hitched. Crack, crack, crack. The fracture spread, webbing out like lightning. But instead of breaking apart, the shards of the mirror peeled back, like a doorway, like something was trying to step through. Jonathan's instinct screamed, "Run, run, run!" But his feet wouldn't move. His muscles locked. A hand slid through the broken glass. It hit the floor and shattered. Long fingers. Too long. Bone-thin and grey, stretching into Jonathan's world. The arm followed, then the shoulder, then... Jonathan broke. He turned and ran. He sprinted for the door, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his hands fumbling for the lock. Behind him, the sound of shattering glass erupted. Not onto the floor, but inward, like a vacuum sucking reality itself into the mirror's depths. Jonathan yanked the door open and stumbled into the hallway, his mind reeling. As he turned to slam the door shut, he saw it. A shadow stepped fully into the apartment. The reflection man was no longer trapped behind glass. He was here, and he was smiling. Jonathan ran. His bare feet pounded against the cold hallway floor as he sprinted down the corridor of his apartment building. Every instinct in his body screamed, "Don't look back, don't look back, don't look back." Behind him, the sound of glass grinding against itself filled the air. A sickening, unnatural stretching sound, like something bending reality itself to step into a world where it didn't belong. He reached the stairwell and took the steps two at a time, nearly tripping in his desperation. His breath came in ragged gasps, his vision tunneling. He needed to get out, into the street, into the light, anywhere but here. But just as he reached the lobby, everything stopped. The sounds vanished. The pressure in the air lifted. The world felt normal again. Too normal. Jonathan staggered to a halt, heart hammering. The night clerk at the front desk glanced up from his phone, giving him a confused look. "You okay, man?" Jonathan opened his mouth, then hesitated. No one else had heard it. The laughter, the shattering mirror, the thing crawling through into his apartment. None of it had disturbed the world beyond his own. Did I imagine it? Number. He couldn't have. He knew what he saw, what he felt. He turned, looking back toward the hallway he had just escaped from. His apartment door was still open. Light spilled from within, and then a shadow moved. Jonathan's stomach dropped. Something stepped into the hallway. Not something. Him. Jonathan's breath hitched. Standing in the doorway of his apartment was himself. Same clothes, same tired eyes, same exact face. But it wasn't him. The thing looked down at its hands, flexing its fingers slowly, testing them, like it was trying on a new skin. Then it looked up and smiled. Jonathan's vision swam. He staggered back, gripping the edge of the front desk. His own voice, his voice, spoke from the hallway. "Where are you going, Jonathan?" His doppelganger took a slow step forward, then another. The night clerk barely glanced up, as if nothing was wrong, as if he didn't see the imposter walking toward him, wearing his face like a mask. Jonathan's mind reeled. No, this isn't real. This isn't happening. The thing cocked its head. "You look tired," it said, voice laced with something not human. "Why don't you go back inside? Get some sleep." Jonathan took a shaky step backward. The thing stepped forward, and then it raised a hand, slowly, casually, and waved. Jonathan's blood ran cold, because that wasn't just a wave. It was a farewell. The moment he saw it, he knew. If that thing went back inside and shut the door, the world would forget him. Jonathan wouldn't exist anymore. He was being replaced. No. He lunged. Jonathan didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He lunged. His hands collided with his own chest. No, not his. As he crashed into the thing wearing his face. They hit the hallway floor hard. The impact sent a shock through his bones, but he didn't let go. "I won't let you take my life." The imposter lay beneath him, its lips curling into a smirk, Jonathan's smirk. It didn't fight back. It just watched him. "Fighting is pointless," it murmured. Its voice was too smooth, too calm, an imitation perfected in ways that made Jonathan's skin crawl. "This was always going to happen. You let me in." Jonathan gritted his teeth. "Like hell I did." The imposter laughed, a low, dry chuckle. "Didn't you, though? The moment you saw me, the moment you acknowledged me, that's all I needed." Jonathan's stomach twisted. "Starve it," Sarah had said. "Don't look, don't react, don't acknowledge it." He had done everything wrong. The imposter's hand shot up, grabbing his wrists. Jonathan's entire body went numb. A freezing cold sank into his skin, spreading fast, locking his muscles in place. His breath hitched as the sensation crawled into his chest, his throat. "It's taking me." The thing beneath him smiled wider. "Time to sleep, Jonathan." The door to his apartment stood open, just feet away. The door. Jonathan sucked in a sharp breath, forcing his numbing fingers to move. With every ounce of strength left in him, he wrenched free and threw himself toward the apartment. The imposter's expression shifted. Not anger, not fear, surprise. Jonathan grabbed the edge of the doorframe and yanked himself inside. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world twisted. Everything snapped. The air vibrated like a struck bell. The hallway outside flickered, as if reality itself was struggling to hold its shape. The lights warped, the walls bent inward, and the imposter screamed, not in pain, in rage. Jonathan slammed the door shut. The second it closed, the pressure in the room vanished. The air lightened. And then, silence. Jonathan stood there, chest heaving, his back pressed against the door, hands trembling. The apartment was still. Normal. Slowly, he reached for the doorknob, twisted it. The door wouldn't open. Jonathan's pulse spiked. He tried again, turning, pulling, even throwing his weight against it. Locked. Not from the inside, from the outside. A sickening realization crashed over him. He turned, scanning the apartment. Everything looked the same. The same couch, the same kitchen, the same windows. But something felt off. The world beyond his windows was black. Not night, not a city skyline. Just nothing. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jonathan yanked it out, his breath caught in his throat. A message from an unknown number. He opened it with shaking hands. One sentence. Enjoy your new reflection. Jonathan's knees nearly gave out. He stumbled toward the bathroom, his heart slamming against his ribs. He didn't want to look. He knew what he would see, but he had to. He stepped in front of the mirror and stared. The face looking back at him was his, but beyond the mirror, behind his reflection. The real world still existed, and in that world, his imposter was living his life. Jonathan slammed his fist against the glass. No, no. His reflection smiled. Not him, not him. The other Jonathan, the one on the outside. The imposter raised a hand and waved. Jonathan screamed, but no one could hear him, because he was trapped in the reflection, and out there. The man who only appears in reflections was living his life. That ending is chilling. The thought of being trapped while an imposter takes over your life is pure nightmare fuel. This story has serious viral potential. It's got the perfect blend of psychological horror, suspense, and a terrifyingly original premise. If you wanted to take it further, you could expand on the imposter's life outside, how Jonathan tries to escape, or even introduce others who've suffered the same fate. His footsteps didn't sound right anymore. Too heavy, too wet, like something crawling just beneath his skin. Claire. His voice was closer now, too close. She reached the attic door, grabbed the frame, and hauled herself inside. The second she did, the door slammed shut behind her. The attic was wrong, different. The floor felt like breathing skin beneath her palms. The air smelled like damp earth and rot. And the walls, they were moving, pulsing, expanding and contracting like lungs. Claire swallowed hard, forcing herself to move, to think. This place wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it had been waiting for her. A soft sound made her freeze. Not footsteps, not a voice, something dripping. She lifted her gaze, and her breath died in her throat. Above her, the ceiling was gone. In its place was a void, a deep, endless pit of shifting blackness, and inside it, dozens of eyes, wide, watching, unblinking. They twitched and rolled, fixing on her all at once. And then, the footsteps began. Not from behind her, not from below, from above. Claire's pulse pounded. The footsteps weren't just on the ceiling anymore. They were crawling down the walls, toward her. Claire staggered back, her heart hammering. Number no, this isn't real. But the thing descending from the ceiling, it was real, and it was smiling. Not Ethan, not anymore. Its limbs cracked and stretched, its body unfolding like an insect, too many joints bending in the wrong directions. The mask of Ethan's face was still there, but now it was melting, sliding away to reveal something else beneath, something ancient, something hungry. You should have stayed buried, Claire. Its voice was not one voice anymore. It was many, a chorus of those who had come before her, those who had been swallowed by the house. Claire's breath hitched. She had to end this, and she knew how. She reached into her pocket, her lighter, the one Ethan had given her years ago. Hands trembling, she flicked it open. A tiny flame sputtered to life. Not much, but enough. The attic was alive. That meant it could burn. The thing on the ceiling stopped, for the first time. It hesitated. Claire didn't wait. She grabbed the nearest rotting sheet, one of the old dust covers still draped over the forgotten furniture, and set it on fire. Flames raced across the attic floor. The house screamed. The walls buckled. The ceiling trembled. The eyes above her rolled wildly in their sockets. And the thing that had once been Ethan, it shrieked, a raw, inhuman wail that shook the very foundation of the house. Claire ran. She threw herself at the attic door, and this time it let her go. The second her feet hit the stairs, smoke billowed behind her. Flames crawled down the walls, consuming everything in their path. The thing in the attic screamed again, but its voice was fading, dying. Claire didn't stop running. She stumbled down the steps, through the choking smoke, toward the front door. It was still locked, still sealed, but the fire had weakened it. With every last ounce of strength, Claire threw herself forward. The door gave way, and she fell into the night. Claire hit the ground hard, her lungs heaving for air. Behind her, the house burned. Flames crawled up the walls, swallowing the windows, devouring the attic where the thing had waited. The night was alive with the sound of crackling fire and shrieking wood, and deep within the blaze, something screamed. Not human, not anymore. The sound ripped through the night, shaking the trees, vibrating in Claire's skull. A dying wail. The house was angry. It was fighting, but it was losing. Claire pushed herself up, stumbling backward. She had done it. She had killed it. But as she turned to run, a voice stopped her. Claire. She froze. Her blood turned to ice. Because the voice, it was Ethan's. Slowly, so slowly, she turned back. The fire raged, swallowing the house in an inferno of light. But through the smoke, through the twisting blackened beams, she saw him. Ethan, standing in the doorway, untouched by the flames. His face was his again. No melting skin, no hollow eyes, just Ethan. And he was smiling. You set me free, Claire. Tears blurred her vision. Number, this isn't real. Ethan was dead. The thing in the attic had taken him. This couldn't be him. And yet, he looked at her, really looked at her, like he used to, like he remembered her. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Ethan. The fire roared around him, but he just kept smiling. I'm not afraid anymore. Claire's heart shattered, because now she understood. The house hadn't just been haunted. It had been hungry. It had been keeping him trapped, twisting him, wearing him. But now it was burning. Now he was free. A gust of wind tore through the trees. The flames exploded upward, and in an instant, his footsteps didn't sound right anymore.